Oh, this is just my unemployed twin. Victoria's voice dripped with mock sympathy as she introduced me to her colleagues. She tried to do some tech thing, but you know how those startups go. She laughed, pulling me closer in a way that seemed affectionate but felt like a vice grip. Don't worry, I'll always take care of my pathetic sister. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 29, I was standing in my parents' backyard during our annual family reunion, being paraded around by my twin sister like her personal cautionary tale. The same sister who had just been announced as the youngest vice president at Anderson & Shaw Investments, while I was supposedly living off her charity. If only they knew. Sarah's going through a rough patch, Victoria continued, addressing her boss, James Anderson, who looked at me with that particular blend of pity and dismissal I'd grown used to at these gatherings. But that's what family's for, right? I took a sip of champagne, the expensive kind Victoria had insisted on bringing to show off her recent promotion, and smiled. Not the tight, angry smile she was probably expecting, but a genuine one. Because while Victoria was busy playing the role of the successful sister, she had no idea what was really happening at her precious investment firm. "You're so good to her," our mother chimed in, patting Victoria's arm. "I don't know what Sarah would do without you." I watched my father beam at Victoria with undisguised pride. The golden child, the successful one. The daughter who had followed in his footsteps into finance while I had supposedly thrown my life away on computer games. That's what he called my software company when I started it 3 years ago. The company I had sold last month for $47 million. But they didn't know that yet. Nobody did, except my lawyers and the tech giant that had acquired my cybersecurity platform. The deal was still under wraps, part of a larger strategic acquisition that would be announced next quarter. I took another sip of champagne, remembering the day Victoria had helped me by offering to invest $10,000 in my startup. "Consider it sisterly charity," she'd said, sliding the check across the table at our favorite childhood diner. "Maybe it'll help you avoid complete failure." I had torn up the check right there. She'd been furious, not because I'd rejected her help, but because I had denied her the chance to lord it over me forever. "You'll regret this," she'd snapped. "When you're broke and desperate, remember who tried to help you." Now watching her work the crowd at the reunion, I thought about the email I'd received that morning from her firm's technology department. They were implementing my security software next month, a decision Victoria had championed, unaware that she was actually putting her failing sister's creation at the heart of her company's infrastructure. "Sarah, honey," my mother's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Victoria mentioned she might have an entry-level position opening up in her department. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" I glanced at Victoria, who smiled benevolently. "Everyone starts somewhere, sis. I'd be happy to mentor you." The words hit their target. They always did with Victoria. She had perfected the art of sounding generous while twisting the knife. 29 years as twins had taught her exactly how to hurt me most effectively. "Actually," I started, but Victoria quickly interrupted. "Oh, James, I have to tell you about the Morrison account." She steered her boss away, cutting off any chance of me correcting her mother's assumptions. Classic Victoria. She'd been doing this since we were kids. Whenever I had news or achievements to share, she'd find a way to drown them out with her own successes. When I made the honor roll, she'd announce her selection as class president. When I won the state science fair, she'd reveal her acceptance to an elite summer program. I wandered away from the main gathering, finding a quiet spot near the old oak tree where we used to play as children. The treehouse was still there, though nobody had climbed up in years. Victoria had declared herself too sophisticated for it by age 12, but I kept going up there to code, finding peace in the solitude while she practiced her networking skills at junior country club events. Hiding from your sister's success. I turned to find my Aunt Margaret approaching, 2 glasses of wine in hand. She offered me one with a knowing look. Unlike the rest of the family, Aunt Margaret had always seen through Victoria's performance. "Not hiding," I said, accepting the wine, "just taking a break from being the family disappointment." She snorted. "Please. I saw your presentation at the tech conference last month. Brilliant work, by the way, though I suspect our dear Victoria doesn't know about that." I nearly choked on my wine. "You were there." "I may be old, but I do read tech journals. When I saw your name on the speaker list, I had to see for myself. Your encryption protocol is revolutionary. She smiled at my shocked expression. What? You think because I'm your father's sister, I must be another finance drone? I laughed, really laughed, for the first time that day. Aunt Margaret, you're full of surprises. So are you, dear. I assume the family doesn't know about the acquisition. I shook my head. How did you? I have friends in the industry. Don't worry, I know it's still under wraps. She patted my arm. But I have to ask, does Victoria know her firm just bought your software? Not yet. I couldn't help but smile. She's the one who pushed for it. Apparently, it's going to be her crowning achievement as VP, modernizing their cybersecurity infrastructure. Aunt Margaret's laugh was deliciously wicked. Oh, this is too perfect. When will they announce it? Next quarter, right after they finish implementation. And right after Victoria finishes taking all the credit for discovering this revolutionary technology, I assume. I nodded, watching Victoria hold court across the lawn. She was in her element, chest puffed up with pride, as she detailed her latest triumph to our enraptured parents. You know, Aunt Margaret said thoughtfully, your grandmother, my mother, would have loved this. She always said Victoria reminded her of your father. All flash, no substance. Dad has substance, I protested weakly. He used to. Before he got caught up in the game of appearances. Your grandmother saw it happening and tried to warn him. That's why she left her technology patents to me instead of him. He still doesn't know that half his firm's early success came from licensing fees I chose not to collect. I stared at her. What? She winked. We quiet ones have to stick together. Speaking of which, she pulled an envelope from her purse. This came to my office. I think you might want to read it before the day is over. Inside was a letter from Anderson & Shaw's board of directors, marked confidential. My hands trembled as I read it. Is this real? I whispered. Very. James Anderson may be impressed by Victoria's sales pitch about the new security system. But he's not stupid. He did his research after she presented it. Imagine his surprise when he traced the technology back to its original creator. I read the letter again. The board wasn't just implementing my software. They wanted to bring me on as their chief technology officer, overseeing the entire digital transformation of the firm. They're announcing it next week, Aunt Margaret said. I thought you might want to know before Victoria does. I folded the letter carefully, my mind racing. She's going to be furious. Oh, undoubtedly. Finding out her unemployed sister is about to become her boss? Aunt Margaret's eyes twinkled. I would miss it for the world. As if on cue, Victoria's voice carried across the lawn. Sarah, stop hiding and come celebrate my promotion properly. I slipped the letter into my pocket and squared my shoulders. Duty calls. Give her hell, dear, Aunt Margaret whispered. I made my way back to the main gathering, where Victoria was holding up her champagne glass. A toast, she announced, to family, success. And she smiled at me with artificial sweetness, helping those less fortunate find their way. The crowd raised their glasses. I raised mine too, catching James Anderson's eye across the circle. He gave me the slightest nod, and I had to bite back a smile. Speaking of finding your way, Victoria continued, slipping an arm around my shoulders, I have wonderful news. Sarah, I've convinced the HR department to create a special position for you. Nothing too challenging, of course, but it's a start. Our mother clasped her hands together in delight. Dad beamed. The perfect family picture. Successful daughter generously helping her failing twin. I took a deep breath. The letter felt warm in my pocket, like it was eager to burst out and shatter this carefully constructed scene. But not yet. Let Victoria have her moment. After all, next week was going to be interesting enough. Thank you, Victoria, I said, raising my glass higher, to new beginnings. She couldn't have known why I was smiling. None of them could. But as I sipped my champagne, watching Victoria bask in her imagined superiority, I thought about the email I'd received just before the party, the one confirming that the Anderson & Shaw board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. The meeting where they would announce their acquisition of my company, my new position as CTO, and the complete restructuring of their technical division. The meeting where Victoria would learn that her latest triumph, the security system she'd so proudly championed, was actually created by her unemployed twin sister. The same meeting where she discovered that her entry-level position offer was about to become incredibly awkward, given that I would soon be several levels above her in the corporate hierarchy. But for now, I just smiled and let her have her moment in the sun. After all, what kind of sister would I be if I didn't support her success? Even if it was about to become the shortest-lived promotion in Anderson and Shaw history, Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp September air that usually signaled change in Boston. I stood outside Anderson and Shaw's gleaming headquarters, watching executives file through the revolving doors, none of them aware that today would reshape the company's future. My phone buzzed, another text from Victoria. Don't forget about our HR meeting at 11. Wear something professional if you have anything suitable. I smoothed down my tailored Armani suit and smiled at the irony. Victoria had always been obsessed with appearances, carefully cultivating her image as the polished, successful twin. Meanwhile, I'd spent years reinvesting every penny into my company, wearing the same rotation of basic business casual outfits that had made her cringe. But today was different. Today, I dressed for the role I was about to step into. Sarah, James Anderson's voice boomed across the lobby as I entered. He strode over, hand extended, ready for the big reveal. Victoria, who had been waiting by the reception desk, did a double take. Her perfectly manicured hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. Sarah, what are you doing here? Our HR meeting isn't until 11. Change of plans, James said cheerfully. Sarah's needed in the board meeting. You too, Victoria, shall we? I watched the confusion play across my sister's face as we rode the elevator to the top floor. She kept shooting me suspicious glances, probably trying to figure out why her unemployed sister was suddenly on a first-name basis with the CEO. The boardroom was packed when we arrived. Victoria immediately moved to take her usual seat, but James gestured her to the side. Sarah, why don't you sit here? He pulled out a chair near the head of the table. Victoria's face flushed. Mr. Anderson, that's my... Ladies and gentlemen, James interrupted, calling the room to order. Today marks a pivotal moment for Anderson and Shaw. As you know, we've been pursuing an aggressive modernization of our technical infrastructure. Victoria has been particularly vocal about the revolutionary security system we're implementing. Victoria preened, recovering some of her confidence. Yes, I've been overseeing the entire. What many of you don't know, James continued smoothly, is that we've actually acquired the company behind this technology. And today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to its founder and CEO, who will be joining us as our new Chief Technology Officer. The blood drained from Victoria's face as James turned to me with a warm smile. Sarah? I stood feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Thank you, James. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Mitchell, founder of Secure Flow Technologies. And yes, I added, meeting Victoria's stunned gaze, Victoria's twin sister. The next hour passed in a blur of presentations and questions. I outlined my vision for the company's digital transformation, fielding technical queries that would have made Victoria's head spin. She sat frozen in her chair, watching her carefully constructed narrative crumble. When the meeting ended, Victoria cornered me by the water cooler. How long? She hissed. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? Building a successful company? About 3 years. You know, since I started that tech thing you love mocking. You let me make a fool of myself. At the family reunion, in front of everyone. No, Victoria, you did that all on your own. Do Mom and Dad know? Not yet, though I imagine the press release tomorrow might clue them in. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in just like they used to when we were kids, and she was about to blame me for something. You have to turn it down. I stared at her. Excuse me? This position. My position. I'm VP of Strategic Development. I can't report to my little sister. First of all, you're 3 minutes older than me. And second, I gently removed her hand from my arm. I earned this. Every bit of it. Without family connections, without Dad's influence, without anything except my own hard work. Hard work? She laughed bitterly. You got lucky with some computer program. I've spent years building relationships, playing the game. And now the game has changed. James's voice made us both jump. He stood in the doorway, his expression stern. Victoria, my office. Now. I watched them walk away, feeling an odd mix of triumph and sadness. Victoria had always been so convinced of her superiority, so certain that her way, the networking, the politics, the carefully cultivated image, was the only path to success. She'd never understood that while she was playing office politics, I was building something real. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Margaret. Just saw the press release draft. How's our girl taking it? About as well as you'd expect, I texted back. Your parents called me in a panic. Apparently, Victoria rang them crying about betrayal and sabotage. I took great pleasure in setting them straight. I could imagine that conversation. Aunt Margaret had never been one to mince words, especially when it came to puncturing family pretensions. Victoria emerged from James' office an hour later, her perfect composure notably ruffled. She walked straight past me to her desk and began gathering her things. Victoria, I started. Don't. She shoved a framed photo into her bag, the one of her and Dad at her college graduation, both beaming with identical expressions of satisfied ambition. You've won, okay. Isn't that what you wanted? This isn't about winning. No. She whirled to face me. Then what's it about? Revenge? Making me look stupid? Proving you're better than me? It's about business. About building something valuable. Not everything is a competition, Victoria. Easy for you to say now that you're on top. She zipped her bag with unnecessary force. I quit, by the way, in case you were wondering. I won't work for my twin sister. I watched her gather the last of her belongings, thinking about all the times she'd made me feel small, insignificant, unworthy. Part of me wanted to let her walk away, let her live with the consequences of her arrogance. But another part remembered the little girl who used to sneak into my bed during thunderstorms, who knew all my secrets before I could speak them, who had once been my other half before competition and jealousy drove us apart. The Morrison account, I said just as she reached the door. She paused. What about it? It's yours. If you want to stay, the client relationship stays with you. You did build that connection after all. She turned slowly, suspicion warring with interest in her expression. And I'd report to you. On technical matters, yes, but client relationships would still be your domain. You're good at that part, Victoria, really good. When you're not busy trying to prove you're better than everyone else. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Victoria, the one who used to share her dessert with me, who'd hold my hand on the first day of school, who knew how to be a sister instead of a rival. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I'm asking. After she left, I sat at my new desk, looking out over the Boston skyline. My phone was full of messages. Congratulations, surprise responses, a typically cryptic text from Dad asking if we could discuss this situation over dinner. But the message that caught my eye was from Mom. I'm sorry. For not seeing, for not believing. Can we talk? I picked up my phone and typed a reply. Dinner tomorrow? Bring Victoria. I think it's time we all had an honest conversation. After all, success meant nothing if you couldn't share it with family, even if they needed a wake-up call first. I chose Giulia's for dinner, an intimate Italian restaurant far from the financial district where Victoria and Dad usually held court. No power lunches here, no business deals being brokered over expensive wine, just good food and private booths where families could talk without an audience. I arrived early, sliding into a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. The hostess brought me a glass of Chianti, and I found myself checking my phone every few minutes, half expecting a text canceling the whole thing. Mom arrived first, looking nervous in a way I rarely saw her. Usually, she was the perfect corporate wife, polished and poised for whatever social situation Dad's career demanded. Tonight, she seemed smaller somehow, more real. Sarah, she said, hovering by the table. You look different. Good different or bad different? Confident, she sat down, smoothing her napkin with anxious fingers. I've been reading about your company, the things they're saying in the business journals. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have understood? Or would you have just compared it to Victoria's latest promotion? She flinched. We never meant to. Yes, you did. I kept my voice gentle but firm. Every comparison, every dismissal, every time you held up Victoria's path as the only measure of success. It was all very deliberate. Your father, she began, then stopped herself. No, I can't blame this all on him. I did it too. It was easier to understand Victoria's world, to celebrate things we could brag about at dinner parties. Technology, computers, it all seemed so abstract. Until it made me a millionaire. She had the grace to look ashamed. Until we realized how wrong we'd been. The arrival of Dad and Victoria interrupted whatever she might have said next. They walked in together, both looking uncomfortable in a way that suggested they'd been arguing outside. Victoria had changed from her work clothes into something more casual, though I noticed she kept her VP pin on her jacket lapel. "Sarah." Dad's greeting was stiff. He hadn't called me since the press release, though his office had reached out about potentially investing in my next venture. "You're looking professional." "Amazing what a few $1,000,000 can do for your wardrobe," I replied dryly. Victoria snorted, then quickly covered it with a cough. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of the sister who used to share my sense of humor, who could always see through Dad's corporate facade. We ordered drinks, then sat in awkward silence until the waiter brought bread. Mom kept glancing between Victoria and me like she was watching a tennis match, waiting to see who would serve first. "So," Dad finally said, his business voice in full effect, "I assume you called this dinner to discuss the situation at Anderson and Shaw." "Actually, I called it to discuss our situation." I met his gaze steadily. "The company is just a symptom of a much bigger problem." "I don't see any problem," he replied. "You've achieved success in your field. We're very proud." "Are you? Or are you just afraid of looking foolish for dismissing me all these years?" Victoria shifted in her seat. "Sarah." "No, let's be honest for once." I leaned forward. "You're not proud, Dad. You're threatened, because I succeeded without your help, without your connections, without following your precious plan. And you," I turned to Victoria, "you're angry because I didn't win the game your way." "That's not." Victoria started, then stopped. "Okay, maybe a little." "A little?" Mom's voice was surprisingly sharp. "Victoria, you spent years tearing your sister down." "We all did." "And for what?" "Because she chose a different path. Because she rejected our path." Dad's fist hit the table, making the glasses jump. "I offered to bring her into the firm right out of college. Instead, she went off to play with computers and built a multi-million-dollar company," Victoria finished quietly, while I was still bragging about making VP. We all turned to stare at her. Victoria never admitted weakness, never acknowledged anyone else's success. "What?" She shrugged, trying for nonchalance but not quite making it. "I can't pretend anymore. Not after today's board meeting." She looked at me directly for the first time since sitting down. "You were amazing in there. All those technical questions, the vision for the company's future, you knew exactly what you were talking about. While I've been faking it, you've been actually doing it." "Victoria," I started, but she held up a hand. "Let me finish. I've been awful to you. At the reunion, at work, basically our whole lives. And the worst part is, I didn't even realize how awful until I saw you in that boardroom. You weren't just successful, you were confident, competent, completely in your element. And I was jealous, not of your money or your position, but of your certainty. You always knew who you were, what you wanted. I just knew who Dad wanted me to be." Dad made a choking sound. Mom reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I gave you everything," he said to Victoria. "The connections, the opportunities, the pressure," she finished. "The constant expectation to be perfect, to follow in your footsteps. While Sarah," she smiled slightly, "Sarah was free to find her own way." "Free?" I couldn't help laughing. "You think being the family disappointment was freedom? Wasn't it? You got to try and fail and try again without worrying about ruining the family name. I had to be perfect from day one." "Girls," Mom interrupted, her voice trembling. "I think what we're all trying to say, badly, is that we've hurt each other. A lot, for years. And now?" Dad demanded. "What do you want from us, Sarah? An apology? Public acknowledgement?" "I want my family back," I said simply. "Not the perfect image we show at reunions, not the roles we've all been playing. I want us to be real with each other." Victoria reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was tentative, so different from the controlling grasp she'd used at the reunion. "I'd like that," she said softly. "And I'd like to stay at Anderson and Shaw. If the offer still stands." "It does." I squeezed her hand. "You're still the best relationship builder I know, when you're not being a complete brat," she supplied with a faint smile. "Yeah, working on that." Dad cleared his throat. "And what about my offer to invest in your next venture?" "That depends," I replied. "Are you investing as a businessman trying to control his daughter's success, or as a father supporting her dreams?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying his wine glass like it held the answers to questions he'd never thought to ask. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I'm not sure I know how to be just a father anymore." "Then maybe that's where we start," Mom suggested, "with being honest about what we don't know." The waiter chose that moment to bring our meals, the arrival of food providing a welcome break in the intensity. As we began to eat, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, memories of childhood pranks, Victoria's recent disastrous attempt at cooking, Mom's secret passion for sci-fi novels that she always hidden from her book club. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, old habits of competition flickering between Victoria and me, Dad's instinct to lecture and direct barely held in check. But it was real, and for now, that was enough. As we finished our desserts, Victoria pulled out her phone and opened Instagram. "Time for a new family photo," she suggested, one without any fake rolls or forced smiles. I looked at our parents, saw the same tentative hope in their faces that I felt in my heart. "Yes," I said. "I think it's time for something real." 6 months after that dinner at Julia's, we gathered again for the annual family reunion. Same backyard, same oak tree, but everything else had changed. Victoria stood by the grill, attempting to master the art of burger flipping while simultaneously explaining a client proposal to me. She'd grown into her role at Anderson & Shaw, focusing on what she did best, building relationships, while actually taking the time to understand the technology she was selling. "So if we implement the new security features for their Asia branch," she flipped a burger with more enthusiasm than skill, sending it dangerously close to the edge of the grill. "Maybe I should handle the cooking," I suggested, reaching for the spatula. "Oh no," she grinned. "The great tech genius isn't better than me at everything. I've been practicing." "Is that what you call the 3 charred attempts currently residing in the trash?" She bumped my shoulder playfully, so different from the aggressive posturing of last year. "Watch it, boss, or I'll tell everyone about your disastrous presentation in Tokyo." "You mean the one where I landed the biggest contract in company history?" "I mean the one where you accidentally bowed so low you knocked over the CEO's water glass." We both laughed, the sound carrying across the yard to where our parents sat with Aunt Margaret. Mom looked up and smiled, still seeming slightly amazed whenever she saw us getting along. The past 6 months hadn't been easy. Old habits died hard, and there were still moments when Victoria's competitive streak flared up, or when Dad slipped into his corporate mentor mode instead of just being a father. But we were trying, all of us, to build something new from the ruins of our old roles. "Your sister's going to burn those burgers," Aunt Margaret observed, joining us by the grill. "Just like your mother used to." "I heard that," Mom called out, "and I'll have you know I've taken cooking classes." "Online classes don't count, dear," Aunt Margaret shot back, "especially when you watch them at double speed." Dad approached with a fresh bottle of wine, more relaxed in shorts and a casual shirt than I'd seen him in years. The retired pin on his golf hat was new, a gift from Victoria and me when he finally decided to step back from his firm 3 months ago. "Anyone else smell something burning?" he asked innocently. Victoria quickly flipped the burgers, revealing their distinctly blackened undersides. "They're supposed to be like that. It's caramelization." "Is that what they're calling cremation these days?" I reached for the spatula again. "Come on, let me help." This time, she handed it over with a dramatic sigh. "Fine, but only because I have to finish telling you about the Asia proposal." Speaking of proposals, Mom interrupted. "Isn't James Anderson's son joining us today?" Victoria blushed slightly. "Marcus is stopping by later. And before anyone starts matchmaking, it's strictly professional. He's helping me understand the technical side of things." "Is that why you've been taking coding classes?" I asked innocently. "You know about that?" "I'm the CTO, Vic. I can see everyone's learning portal activity." She shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. "Know thy enemy, right?" I thought I was no longer the enemy. "Fine. Know thy sister/boss/apparently all-knowing tech overlord." Dad cleared his throat. Speaking of knowing things, he pulled an envelope from his pocket. I've been waiting for the right moment to share this. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before. Mom and Dad in front of their first office, decades ago. They looked young, excited, a little scared. Just like Victoria and I had both been at different points in our careers. "Your mother and I started with nothing," Dad said quietly. "No family connections, no safety net. Just determination and maybe a little too much pride." He looked at both of us. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what that felt like. I got so caught up in maintaining an image and controlling the narrative that I stopped seeing how amazing it was to build something of your own. Dad, Victoria started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish. Sarah, watching you build your company, seeing you succeed on your own terms, it reminded me of who I used to be. And Victoria, seeing you find your own path within the corporate world, not just following in my footsteps, but creating your own. I'm proud of both of you. Not because of your titles or bank accounts, but because you're finally becoming who you're meant to be. Mom wiped a tear from her cheek. What your father's trying to say is that we're sorry for the competition we created, the pressure we put on you both. We thought we were pushing you towards success, but we were really just pushing you apart. Aunt Margaret raised her glass. Well, it only took them 30 years to figure it out. Better late than never. We all laughed, the tension breaking like a summer storm. Victoria handed me the last batch of unburned burgers to place on the serving platter. You know, she said thoughtfully, I always thought I needed to prove I was better than you to be worth anything. Turns out we're both pretty amazing in completely different ways. Speak for yourself, I teased. I'm clearly superior at grilling. She splashed me with her wine, just like she used to do with her juice box when we were kids. Keep it up and I'll tell Marcus about your Pokemon collection. You mean the vintage cards now worth 6 figures? Go ahead. Mom shook her head, watching us with a mixture of amusement and relief. I forgot how you two used to be before we made everything a competition. Always teasing, always laughing. Always conspiring, Dad added. Remember when they reprogrammed my office computer to speak in cartoon voices? That was all Sarah, Victoria said quickly. Really? Because I distinctly remember you being the one who recorded all the voices. Details. A car pulled into the driveway, Marcus Anderson arriving with a bottle of wine and what looked suspiciously like coding textbooks under his arm. Victoria smoothed her hair self-consciously. Not strictly professional, huh? I whispered as she hurried to greet him. Oh, shut up. Make me. She stuck out her tongue, completely breaking her usually polished image. Maybe I will, as soon as I figure out this Python thing. Good luck with that. I hear the instructor is a real hard-ass. Yeah, but she's kind of awesome too. Victoria's smile turned serious for a moment. Thanks, Sarah. For not giving up on me, for giving me a chance to be more than Dad's copy. Thanks for finally letting yourself be more. We watched as Marcus greeted our parents, clearly nervous but trying to hide it. Dad was in full interrogation mode until Mom elbowed him sharply. Remember, she hissed, we're not controlling anymore. I'm not controlling, he protested. I'm simply asking about his intentions regarding our daughter's professional development. Aunt Margaret rolled her eyes. Oh, for heaven's sake, Richard. Let the girl write her own story. I looked around at my family, imperfect, recovering, but finally real. The old roles were fading, the golden child, the disappointment, the corporate success story, the family failure. In their place were just people trying their best to understand each other. Victoria caught my eye and smiled, a genuine smile without any of the old competition or resentment. I smiled back, remembering all the years we'd wasted trying to prove we were better than each other, when we could have been helping each other be better all along. Hey, she called out, who wants to hear about the time Sarah tried to debug a server while having wisdom teeth surgery? Only if we can also talk about your first attempt at coding, Ms. I'll just delete the entire database. She laughed, the sound pure and free. Deal. But first, can you help me rescue these burgers? Always, I said, joining her at the grill. That's what sisters are for. And finally, after all these years, we both knew exactly what that meant.